Here we are. I can't believe it. It's amazing. We got some awesome people here, and the culmination of all that, the progression, the way it all fit together. There's so much to talk about. Will, you started off.
Well, first I want to say, Brandon Martin, that was probably the most powerful speeches that I've ever heard. That was fucking incredible. It gave me chills.
Goosebumps.
Oh man, yeah, that was fantastic. I hope everyone takes Brandon's request, take that, use that, speak that into a camera, put it out there in the ether webs, and fully, first and foremost, comprehend it, what the words that he is saying, and absolutely use that and put that out there. That was fantastic. You didn't need slides or anything with that, bro. It was, you looked good. You spoke clear, and the words were just incredible, man. So thanks for that, man. That was fantastic.
Oop, I'm muted. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be able to put that together. My whole intention behind that was to kind of put myself into the idea of the founders and coming from my current knowledge base, you know. And I was like, okay, what can I say here to prevent the landslide that we went into, that the founders kind of slipped up on? And I wanted to invoke the spirit of liberty as it should be stated today.
Well done. And Diesel Automatic came through with I think that's a fresh track he did, and that was great. I love the kind of the AI animations over the face. That was fantastic. So, in my closing words, everyone here on day one, Funnel 4 did a phenomenal job. Very impressive with the content, the structure, the messages. So, extremely honored and grateful for day one.
Yeah, that Cecil song. I was just going to put it in the chat. It's called "I Am Free." That was a good, really good uh, icing on the cake. To man, I felt like you ever see one of these movies when they're trying to talk to everybody, they're about to go into a war or something. Like Brendan just gave us a speech like that, and I've been feeling like off what you said, Conrad, about sound and vibration being like that's what reality is. Like we're speaking these words out really powerful right now, and it feels good. Like this is what we need to be doing. This is what everybody needs to be doing.
Yeah, hey guys, are you hearing me well? I'm trying a bit of a different setup. I just want to make sure I'm not feeding back. Okay, great. Yeah, I loved it, and I knew I was gonna like it when I saw the title. I'm gonna love that declaration, and then I leave with it after that song too, thinking I gotta thank you guys not just for organizing it and bringing me here, but the I thought the sequencing was like perfect. It was beautiful. Like the song made sense. I know that was intentional. I saw it from early on how you're trying to build it. So it's been beautiful to be a part of that.
Yeah, it was both, it was an intuitive process and intuitively intentional, but also deeply synchronistic because we didn't watch anything in full. Yeah,
Oh
so
wow.
I find that to be like really amazing. It makes me feel like there's magic, kind of happening here that amplifies the messages, and it really just today was so powerful and wonderful, inspiring. And I want to thank all you guys who presented. It's just really a kick ass. So good.
That's a treat for us too, right? I mean, we're organizers putting this event on. We're also, viewers and students of all these presentations. So, sure, we check them out, make sure audio, video is all good. There's going to be no issues. But then we're watching this whole conference, with all of you guys as well. So we appreciate all the engagement, the questions, and the comments, and the chat, and people that showed up. So, Chris, go for it.
I like this question a lot because after creating some presentations, it's like I wonder if people realize how much time these presenters put into the work they do to get this final result. And how many people in the world out there in today's world have the spiritual armor and willpower to sit there for hours and hours on end editing? And you know here Brandon's got infant, brand new baby and a new relationship. Look, Chris is managing his children. Leslie's got 3 kids. Like
I got a chicken.
you
Got
got
a
so
chicken.
And a
She'll-
daughter and a cat, and I don't know what other
Dogs,
menagerie.
yeah.
and Brandon Martin, Brandon Spencer, the amount of work that he puts in and the hours, I've seen it myself. He's dedicated, very dedicated man who inspires me every week. So, but yeah, we'll send it to Brandon Martin since the question is for you. How long of a time period did you spend on this document from concept to finish, from Youngblood Elixir?
I would say that it was accumulation of my life's work. So it's not something I could quantify into just a short period of time. I have rigorously driven this knowledge into the soul of me. And it was pretty easy to get it going, but I had to reread the document, obviously, the original Declaration of Independence, and kind of dissect it. And so it took, I don't know, it took probably a few weeks to get together in full. And I wanted to do more with it. And most people who know my work know that I put a lot of time into doing slides like what Chris is talking about. I mean, sometimes it takes thousands upon thousands of hours, depending on the type of work that you're doing, whether it's a podcast or a presentation. You're doing graphic design, you're doing audio and video editing. You're also trying to make sure everything is concise. It takes a lot of work, but once you get it down and you get in the flow, it's actually really fun. So it didn't take too long. I am going to add a few more changes to it before I upload it, but I plan on having it up on my website and freely available for anybody who wants to print it. And I mean, even some people say they want to put their John Hancock on it. I don't really care about that. You do whatever you want with it. That's up to you. And I will have a couple of different stylized versions of that freely available on the Seed Truth website.
Yeah. Do any of you? I mean, we should kind of go back to the beginning of the day. Let's do that because I want to go back to Chris Nelson. Really started things off with just what I think of as a super solid foundation, and then I was so stoked because I had all the metaphors about building and stuff, and I was imagining framing up this construction of thought that I've come up with, this bridge. So way I see it, and then I just knew by Chris's title and the way he does his work that he would set this foundation that would make me feel like then what I'm going to say is going to be better received if, so I really appreciate the way you laid it down, Chris, and the way you do so often, and even popping on my podcast live shows and just always being there with like stuff you've really thought about, even if you have to disagree with someone, you'll say exactly what you think. I really appreciate your style and your hard work you've done to come to that point of thinking mastery.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. Yeah, from the presentation, I think it was obvious that I took the second title that you guys came up with, inspiring care to action. That's what I really based, like, my idea of how I wanted to be inspired by inspiring care to action to formulate a presentation. That's what I based it around. I also put part of the humanity rising, like one of the slides was rise humanity rise, but I realized that after I sent in my video, I forgot to put the actual title as the title, and I used the subtitle as the title as my opening slide. I had FUNL 4, and then I put inspiring care to action instead of humanity rising, and I realized that after, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't use the actual title. But that's because, well, what I really used for like creating the whole presentation was the inspiring care to action. That's why the first 2 slides were, based on the etymology of inspire, and what I also associate with is when you're inspired by something, you can aspire to that as well and live it in your life.
Yeah, and that on that topic, I should say real quick, I want to hear what other people have to say about Chris's presentation too. But like we really, Leslie and myself and Will, met every week for quite a while, tossing around ideas, and same with the Trivium and Funnel 2. Like we really intentionally thought about like, okay, what are we trying to say with this conference? Like, what is the progression? And like the trivium, we had the convergence, trying to bring people together. And then the trivium's like, okay, we got them together. Now, how do we get their attention and get them on the right page? Well, that's when we bring in the tool, the trivium. And then now where do we go with that? And we're like, well, now we need to inspire people to actually care enough to do what we're trying to, the message, And so that you caught right onto that. Thanks, Chris. Would anybody else like to comment on Chris's presentation or any questions for him?
I'll jump in real quick because I know a big factor with us when we were talking about the theme of Funnel 4 was we wanted all the presenters to kind of already be teaching natural law and have that be their main message in their work. Because in order for humanity to rise, that is the cause. Understanding that and aligning that is the core right there. So that had a lot of weight into. Of course, the whole conference is freedom under natural law, but you can bring in other presenters that touch on it, but dive into different categories or come from different sectors. But this one, we wanted to really make sure that that everyone was rooted and the majority of their work was focused around natural law. So, Chris, your presentation was perfect to jump off the whole conference. You did a phenomenal job, like always, man.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to have been invited and honored to be part of a panel of great speakers who, in their own right, put out their own work and do part of the great work of trying to end evil and our collective enslavement that we're chained by the ignorance of others, and that's the goal, and that's why education of natural law is so important. That's the only way the ignorance is going to be diminished and alleviated, so that we can hopefully eventually, maybe in a few centuries, reach true freedom for humanity. I'm not too hopeful for the short term, but there's always the potential for it happening eventually.
Yeah, well, you're raising your own seeds over there, and that's great to see over there on the Canadian side of things, brother. And yeah, it's just interesting, looking at all the presentations going on, and it just hits on so many different things that I myself, as well as with Leslie, with Dissolve and Divide, or my own presentations, I released a conscious hip hop mixtape titled, "The Breath of Life." And Chris, when you introduced your presentation with like aspire, respire, and all these things, like, I was joking around, and I cut this out of my own presentation of like, hey, like joking around but kind of serious, like, hey, I'm trying to aspire to be a breatharian, and that's kind of like a double meaning type of thing and kind of contradictory in and of its own self. And so, yeah, it's funny of just, and yeah, it goes back to what you were saying, just breathing in the breath of life into this reality. Like, what are we actually trying to actualize within our own lives and, within our own immediate environments type of thing. So yeah, it's just hearkening back to the whole theme of inspiring true care to action, the generative principle, aligned to natural law, not just like, oh, there's so many different aspects of care that's been hijacked, right? So yeah, not to dwell on all these things. I know, yeah.
I'll jump in here if I can on inspiring and aspiring, because it made me think the 1, 2, 3 doing the trivium, and then like where do we go from here? This is the whole thing with the octave, that the way I see it, it's like the 7 chakras. So 1, 2, 3 is the foundation, and then you get to the heart, and this is where we're at. We're at like the 4, and then it's really like I see it as a mirror, and then it reflects. So you inspire, you breathe it out, breathe it in, and then you got to breathe it out to put it back out there. So it's really, this is like the reflection point, or what would be what I see as the cosmic womb as well, but it's the heart. It's pumping, sending the blood in and then out. This is the way I saw it. So like me, I'm a fresh face, you know. I've been listening to you guys. I know you guys, but I'm trying to get in here, and well, I'm not really gonna really say anything new, but you know, it's that bringing the fresh flavor. And then, well, we're gonna do the trivium all over again. You know, you go grammar, logic, rhetoric, then okay, we got it. Now we got to reflect it back out and then inspire the next teachers. So yeah, I saw it all as really connecting, from Chris like laying the groundwork foundational, and then it ended with a song, and I had never heard Diesel Automatic, and I heard that, I'm like, man, I see a collab there. I see you know, it'd be nice to do some music. So
Yeah, so many opportunities. And I remember in past conferences, you know, everybody came out inspired. And our original idea for Final Conference was inspired by watching the Seed Conference that Brandon Martin and seedtruth.com put on. And so that's what I feel like is, you know, someone's asking in the comments about, you know, it is, you get low traction and low views on truth and freedom and natural law. And how do we reach more people? Well, this is one of the ways. You put in a lot more effort. You know, like we got to connect with more people, talk to more people, keep reaching out, even though it's hard and even though we get frustrated with people. But I would like to go through and talk about every single presentation. I don't know how much time we have tonight. Maybe we'll be able to do that, maybe not. But I would like to hear from each of you here a little bit. I don't think we've heard from Sarah yet, and then Brandon Spencer, and then after that we can see where the conversation goes. And we got a couple questions in the comments. So, Sarah, thanks so much for coming. Your presentation was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was something. Well, the article itself I've been working on for a couple of years, and it's developed. And sometimes it's like that. And I guess the accumulation is today's presentation.
How was the process of constructing a presentation like this, Sarah?
Well, first I had to really, I would have preferred to draw out all of my images, but there wasn't enough time for that for this particular conference. So I would have preferred to do that, but I used an AI program. I actually to create the actual images. So I cheated in that respect, but I had to get a little bit firm with the AI program that was doing it to give me my images that I wanted. So I actually used a in between the Instagram one and the Copilot one. So eventually, after a few weeks, I was able to actually get all the pictures that I put together. I had an article that I had already been working on, and then I worked on that a little bit more as well to try to just make the details very, exact the way that they should be and clear as much as I could get them. And then I went through the process of finding the imagery that I wanted. So it took me a few weeks to do that. But the article itself is something I've worked on for a couple of years. I mean, like Brandon was saying, like, sometimes the stuff is just an accumulation of what you're putting together through your life experiences and pulling from your own past. So there's a lot of things I never even really figured out until now. But I realized they're things I understood without knowing them from my past. So it's kind of like that. It's weird.
Someone's presentation really, I can't remember whose it was that really put that in my head, that it was Brandon Spencer. The journey is the learning. When you make one of these presentations, it's our own soul journey. Every time I've made one, I'm going through this process. Like, how do I say this? What is it I'm trying to say? And when you push yourself through that process, you learn something from it, So Brandon Spencer, you lit the place up. It's still hot, and where I'm at, like I'm sweating in my shirt. And then Brandon Martin coming after you didn't help. It's just like bam, the heat was on,
Hey, something about the name Brandon, huh?
Yeah, something.
and your visuals were off the hook too, as usual. But yeah, how'd you feel about this one?
First off, thank you. Thank you to all of the presenters. Thank you to all of the individuals who watched this. This presentation was actually quite hard for me because I had never really taken a kind of larger presentation and kind of boiled it down into 1 hour, which is extremely hard. And I remember Brandon Martin kind of talking about this, I want to say with the C presentation. So hell, this was the first time that I had actually tried to do it. And probably will never do it again because it's just so hard because there's a lot you want to get in and there's a lot you want to say, but you are limited on time. So you got to cut so much out. And it was a lot of slides that just couldn't get put in. And then I got toward the end and I'm like, how do I, wrap this all and like put it all together to like get this point across that yes, it is important that the information, it is important where we get our our information from, and it has to be filtered. It has to be like done correctly, but also too, that's not like the end game goal. Is what do we do with the information as far as like once we take it in? So like we can drink from that correct stream of knowledge and taking in the correct information. But once we take it in, what do we do with it? How do we apply it? What do we do in the form of right action, in the form of rhetoric, in the form of the output stage? That's what I want, like people to get because when you put that out, it's like, like we're all, trying to inspire, so there's this universal thing, here with the breath and trying to pretty much blow that light or shine that light outward so that others can develop and taking that knowledge, taking that breath, taking the information and taking that light and go through that same process or start that same process and go through that same journey that we have discovered and still going through so that that way when we all come out on the other side we can actually start to progress in consciousness and true freedom because it's not just taking in the knowledge, which has been perverted, so we have to take in that correct stream of information, but also to what we do with that is going to lead to right action and to correct consequences. And that's what we are all trying to inspire others to do. It's not just, the first part of the trivium and then have the second part, but the third part, it all has to be brought together in some form of alignment to push this knowledge outward so that for that stream of information is in a constant flow so that others can drink from that same spring of knowledge so that others can learn and so that others can go through that same journey and others can go through that same form of self-discovery and self-authenticity and understand these objective truths that we are talking about that have always been there. So like that was like the main theme of that short 1 hour, presentation, because we are trying to inspire others. And when we are, in devoid of conscience, devoid of what's right, devoid of what's wrong, we lack awareness. We lack awareness. We lack the ability to communicate, to understand. So where we draw our knowledge from is crucial. It's crucial. And then the next step is what do we do once we draw that knowledge, once we come to understand it, once we filter it? What do we do with it? And thank you to all of y'all's work, because of course Chris Nelson, have Brandon Martin, Will Keller, Conrad. I love how one of the songs, how one of your beats was so fire. How I actually saved it to my playlist. Gonna go back and check that out. And of course, Sarah, thank you for the creativity. And it's funny because me and Sarah met after Funnel 2, and it's nice for her to to hop on and be a presenter. And one thing I want to say is I've sat back and watched all of the funnel conferences from the first one because I remember the first one very well, and I remember the second one because I was a presenter, and it's just hell amazing to see how much it has progressed. And I want to thank Will and Chris and all of y'all because like like y'all have gotten through all of those technical issues, and that's something that takes perseverance and of course willpower and care and the knowledge as far as, like how to maintain and run these kind of, kill events. So it's nice to see the progression and how it's gotten better. And, it's getting bigger and better. And I like the investment and I like the improvement because I've actually, sat and watched it behind the scenes because I remember funnel 1, 2, and 3. I remember them all because I've always, kind of sit back and watch things behind the scenes. So much appreciate and much love and much respect.
Leslie, you've been kind of quiet. What do you got?
Well, I have said a lot of feedback already today, so I think I just want to, second the power of today, and really excited about tomorrow, and just want to encourage people to come back, and just like it's going to be, if you're happy with today, tomorrow is going to blow you away too. So this is really powerful, and I also feel the expansion. My goal, every year has been to just expand my skill level in some area, somewhat. And so I'm pretty happy this year because some things that seemed really hard before kind of came through for me. So I'm just happy to have a presentation tomorrow that'll show that growth. And I think it's fun. But I'll bring a question up. We can maybe come back to it. But this was from Nick, and he's asking, can we, or how can we start better meeting people where they are at in order to appeal to the masses? And I think this theme of music that both Conrad and I came up with, or were inspired to talk about, I think, and this creative approaches that we're taking with art and music and varieties of people speaking from their own voices, all of that, I think, is how we start to appeal more to the masses. And I think we all are going to pick our own target, like audience. And some of us will be in this kind of everyday kind of street level, different and or more. It's that'll be their place, and others will be teaching teachers. So I think that's why we just want to have more and more people who are being compelled to do that level of work, that you're inspired to do and that comes to you. That's all I'll say.
I'd like to jump in on that because I have a lot of thinking about how do you meet people where they're at. So there's two different, I'm not sure how the question is intended, but I'll answer it both ways. Like in conversation, I've thought about it a lot as well. I found that it's good to not lecture people, right? Because you won't even get there. Like first, they need to relate to you. You need to make yourself relatable. It's really the answer for both ways. So like you got to just strike a rapport with somebody and figure out what they care about. And you'll find we find this all the time, that we have way more in common with people than we have with our divisions and segmentations and everything. So that's how I see it, right? Like first you got to get talking, and then you go in and then you start kind of pushing back, right? But then as a content creator, how do you relate to people? The way I did it is I just started recording on the couch. Like, this is me. I'm a low budget guy. I'm a Polish guy, construction worker from Chicago. So kind of like really make yourself relatable, right? Because I don't have $1 million studio and all these other things, I didn't have like a big social media circle that I was going to get. So I was really going to pick up people one by one. So I think meeting people where they're at is first you put in the groundwork. It's like the grammar. First, you put in the groundwork just to kind of get connected and make yourself relatable and really have compassion for people before really you start taking them down the hard road, because it's going to be a hard road. But first, they got to know you. They got to trust you. And it's not to make it overly like strategic and like a chess game. First you got to get them to care and then you drag them into the deep water. It's not really that. But I think time matters. And that's how you build connection. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, like relationship building. I think relationship is really key to really life itself. So why wouldn't it be to influencing people, right?
I'll add to that. Yeah, this is a really good question for everyone to consider. There's a couple aspects that I always kind of contemplate doing this work. I mean, there's willpower, there's courage, care, and there's imagination. Like, there's not that many people doing this work, so the sound, the volume is very low. And how do we reach people? That's where the creative aspect comes in. When I look at my work, what other ways can I present natural law or objective morality or, the state of the world? Like Chris using kind of the carpenter analogy, bringing the tools in and what do they represent, the symbolism. That's where the creative aspect comes in. So I always say, like, we are artists in this endeavor. Why we still have that opportunity to use these tools in a public platform before, we hit the next level of tyranny and enslavement where we can't. And then it's really picking up the self-defense principle and acting on that. So although the courage, obviously putting yourself out there, like, I know there is 100-fold the amount of people that actually understand this information that have not activated. I know that. Right? So the courage of putting yourself out there, the care as well, right? What do you care about? It's easy to get discouraged and say, fuck it, no one's going to change anyways, or I'm not being heard, and then throw the towel in. You got to have that care for truth and for freedom. And then the willpower and the vigilance to just keep going with that creative aspect of how can I make my own work better? What are marketing strategies, promotional strategies? How can I say something different that I haven't done before to try to reach a different set of people? So it's this whole, there's methods and different aspects that come into play. But I think getting, like what Brandon said, getting people from having that awareness and that information to activating, that's the hardest step for people. And this is where something like the FUNL conference comes into play, where we see people that have, been viewers of this conference and now they're presenters. We've seen people, the majority of the people in the conference have been in How to Become the True Media, including myself. And then bam, they're putting these skills to work. My first formal online presentation was at the Seed 4 conference. And then now, the organizers are throwing a conference. So there's that evolution and the fractalization that just keeps going, and you keep compounding the small moves that make the big jumps and the big leaps.
I'd like to jump in with more of a contrarian, I don't know, as opposed to like kind of like take apart the question, because part of the problem is that meeting people where they're at. Well, you could have 2% of the world's population at a certain level, 5% at another level, 10% at another level. Everyone's going to be at different places, and what we call the journey. So they're on their journey in life, and some of them might get some things, and some of them might not get other things. And so you can target. You could try talking about natural law, and then they don't get it, or they make excuses for why that doesn't exist. So then instead of they don't like the term, so instead of talking about natural law, you just talk about right and wrong. And then then when you bring up examples, well, they might engage in logical fallacies to try excuse things. So then you got to switch it up to like, okay, well, then you gotta actually, what you need to be doing is teaching them how to think, because that's the big problem under all of this is, why do people not understand right and wrong, and why do they make excuses for the wrongs? And underlying it all is how come you can't discern right from wrong? Well, because you don't have a properly developed capacity to think through things. So we've all been through there, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, because you got to be able to discern truth from falsehood. And if you can't do that, well, then you're just going to be led by information, and you're going to just believe in it. So there's all these aspects, and the trivium is a good foundation for that, and learning logical fallacies and cognitive biases that keep you trapped. And like you bring in things as excuses and non sequiturs that have nothing to do with the point being made. And so people need to learn how they're in their own way, as being their own opposition to the advancement in their learning, by understanding all these biases and these fallacies that they engage in that keep them holding themselves back because they don't even have the foundation of knowing themselves. Know thyself. Well, that's part being able to reason properly. That's an important part of that. So that's how I would say that, it's good to try to meet people where they're at, but then you have to get to know the person. And as you're conversing with them, then you can see all these barriers that they have to the acceptance and the realization of the truth. And then you got to always shift and move things around. So there's no like one size fits all to meet people where they're at. And certainly if you're engaging in one-on-one conversations, you have the opportunity to do that. But if you're doing the most effective means, which is a one-to-many relationship where you put out content and then many people can reach it throughout the planet in whatever format, be it writing or art or audio only, or video that has audio, and then you could have art in there and you're speaking words. So that could be the part that's only writing, and you can mix it all up in the video. So this mechanism of creating content is the most efficient because it's a one-to-many relationship. And in that capacity, you're not engaging in like an interpersonal development of a relationship between a specific individual. So you can't really tailor it to that specific individual. So you just put out the content, and whoever comes across it has the opportunity to learn from it and develop themselves at their own pace. And so you can tailor a bunch of content. That's what I've done. I've focused on things of consciousness and understanding how to think better. And I've done morality and many aspects that I view as the most important to help get people to understand morality. But in the end, it's each person's own capacities that have to lead them there. They have to want to seek out the information. And people have reached my information. People have reached a lot of the presenters' information out of nowhere. Some people have come across my work without knowing Mark Passio. So if you put it out there, you have the opportunity for people to come across it, as opposed to a one-on-one rapport that you're trying to build and trying to get someone to understand something.
Hey, it just fired me up. I'm sorry to stack my answer because I agree with you. You're so right. And we're really up against it. Like, we're not going to break through because our subject matter is attractive to people, because people got to face, they look themselves in the mirror and look at their shadow. So we're up against it. Like, we're always going to be up against it. So the unfortunate answer is we got to we got to like compensate for it, like with our technical, like how we look, how we sound, and with our like really that appeal, which is like really hard because that's difficult to do. I see someone commented on it, and I saw it too. Douglas Martin, you're like the background, it looks awesome and everything, and how we look with the microphone and everything and the audio, like this stuff is really difficult to excel in. And it seems like the mainstream's got the upper hand in that too. So it's like we're behind the 8 ball with that. But really, if we're trying to get to people, like it's got to look good, it's got to sound good, and we got to make the shit appealing, which is really difficult. Like, this is not easy. Like, we're in the foxhole with this stuff. It's just how I feel about it.
I would like to add in something on that. I think a lot of people have an issue with ego expectation of instant gratification. So what happens is that people go out and they do this work, and then people don't listen, and they continue to support the immoral, oppressive systems such as the state. And then they decide to just go back into their nihilism and apathy and self-loathing afterwards, because they don't see anybody making a change within themselves, doing the shadow work, and then manifesting that into the world. One thing we have to do is to make sure to mitigate that within ourselves, so that when that does happen, because this is a long-term battle, this is a spiritual war, and this is not going to happen in one day, that when we recognize those things, when we become aware of that within ourselves, we mitigate that so that we can continue to be motivated to do the work, because our service is to truth itself. And despite whether or not the majority understands natural law or not, which is the ultimate goal, to get people to be in alignment with natural law, to get them to understand the cosmic principles, even if you're the only person on the planet who's speaking these things, don't ever lose the spirit of freedom. That's what the Declaration was about. And I like the old Sam Adams quote. He says, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." And that means humanity, men and women, children, everybody. So just keep being persistent. That's what we have to do. We just have to keep being persistent because the ideas are what is important, and progeny will, take those on. That's why I called my conference the Seed Conference, because it's about planting seeds of truth. It's not your responsibility to nurture and give nutrients to those seeds of truth. That's their personal journey to do that. You can provide them with the knowledge of that, of how to do that, where to find the nutrition, the sources. You can even teach them these things, but it's not about you doing that work for them. So we have to get out of this ego expectation of this. And the other thing is, my work, I don't appeal to people. I think it's great to like make things stylized and stuff like that. And it is true that we should be more so on the appealing side than not. But coming from my background, I'm like, it doesn't matter. You either like it or you don't, and my work will stand for itself. And hopefully, more people will take take to the words of truth, because I see, for example, I'll give you an example of this, why style in presentations I've noticed sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Look at the mainstream political streamers of today. They literally are sitting in a room like this, no backgrounds besides their bare walls, and they have hundreds of thousands of viewers. They're sitting there doing political debates, they're doing all kinds of stuff. They don't have mainstream, backing. They don't have anything like this. Hassan Abi, Destiny, all these crazy talking heads that the young kids are listening to, and they're literally just sitting in a room, just gamers sitting there, and they get hundreds of thousands of views constantly, millions across, a week or within a month span. So just make sure you understand that the content is the most important, and then the style. Then you add your creativity of the style and the color to that to really add the cherry on top so people will, like the cake a little bit more. But yeah, I think what you guys said is all important, especially the teaching people how to think. And I also wanted to just say it's awesome to see all these great faces here. I think the conference is amazing. I said it in the comments. It inspires me to continue the Seed Conference. This has been a feedback loop between, us in this great work community. And I'm like, yes, now I'm ready to do mine, like I got to get this out for people and get you guys involved. So I just wanted to thank all of you. Some people new here, like Conrad, I really liked what you had to say about music. I grew up in the underground music, industry, specifically punk. And I just love seeing so much creativity and music and, amazing, thoughtful, heart-filled, heart-based consciousness individuals here coming together. And yeah, thank all you guys for doing what you do.
Thanks, brother.
I was kind of excited to find out, Conrad, you do construction too. I love tools so much. And on that question you're talking about, I often think of what we're up against as a big giant brick wall that goes as far as you can imagine, every direction, and it's hella thick. And it's like, we know it's almost like an impenetrable wall, and it can be kind of defeating. But we also know deep down that there is a such thing as freedom, and it can be broken. Every wall can be broken. So how do you break a unbreakable wall? Well, you start chipping away at it. And the sooner you start chipping away at it, the sooner you start figuring out the methods that work better than others. And so we've all been trying different things. None of us know. I pound my head against the wall often, like, man, why I'm still not getting, you know. But look, the FUNL conference gets a lot more. I've never seen this many views on my restream button before. You know what I mean? But you bring enough people together and you try different combinations of things. You try everything you can. That's like in construction. I had this video. I'm going to share the link in the chat, but it's basically called Conceptual versus Instructional Thinkers. And I've noticed this on the job site. Some people want to follow instructions, and that is the authoritarian mindset that's been just tortured into people from childhood, literally tortured into people's minds through repetition and coercive methods, manipulation, and subtle methods of manipulation. So this instructional, like, tell me what to do. Like, there's a lot of people that are stuck in that. And this is, in terms of how do you talk to people, I think this is one of the first things my mind does. It goes, is this person a relativist? Go to Brandon's presentation. If they're a relativist, I'm not even really going to waste my time, honestly, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't a relativist that are willing to listen or willing to have the conversation or open. If someone's a complete relativist, you're not going to get anywhere. They're nowhere near being open. But then the next thing is, are they a conceptual thinker or are they an instructional thinker? Can they understand a concept or a metaphor, or do they just go back to instructions every time? Because if they're going to do that, you're not going to get that far. You're not having a back and forth. There's not a real communication. There's a one-way street. They're just going back to something in their head. And that's, when they're ready to get around that, that has to come from within. That has to come from will. And so the only thing that I can come up with is inspiring care. And we do that by example. But we don't know the answer. Keep trying different tools. Keep trying something. Be a conceptual thinker. That's what I would like to say on that. We got another 5 minutes here before the stream kind of runs out. So free for all, whoever wants to talk about whatever, it's fine with me.
I just wanted to add on that same topic a bit, because, in Brandon Spencer's video at the end, he talked about embodying the principles. And I think that is very important. I think it's essential. I think energetically, and we're talking about frequency and vibration and being an inspiration to others, that our embodiment of the principles has an effect out into the world, and people are going to be impacted by that one way or another, and it may be that it shakes them up, and it may be that it attracts them to want to learn more about how to have the flow. And, I, as a social worker therapist, I talk to a lot of people, and I definitely see in this sample of people that I talk to, how when people embody goodness, good things happen, and when people do wrong things, chaos occurs. And so we can start to talk to people, as we're talking to people both on podcasts and number, but as well individually, really bring it home to real life examples, of how natural law principles operate in our day-to-day life, because those things are there. And but I think that bringing our authenticity and our honesty, and being as continuing to grow and value our growth is really a part. So being the model of what we're trying to promote. And, as a therapist also, the foundational, one of the first kind of rules of the work is you meet people where they are at, because it's impossible to get someone to learn something that they don't even understand the point of it. No one wants to be coerced or forced in any way, and if they're not going to come to therapy and let's, have somebody make them do things, even people who are looking for a savior of some sort, tend to be really bad followers when it comes to, certain things. So I think that, like if a doctor tells you to exercise and eat well, how many people are doing that? So I think that we need to be creative. I think we need to be consistent, persistent, and get detailed for people to relate, to increase relatability, and help feed back the consequences of their own actions, because their actions are having consequences. And sometimes they don't draw those connections, but we can help shine the light and help them see those connections. And I think that that's powerful. So I wanted to bring up an outside the box way. And this is something that Benny Wills is doing. So Benny Wills has started to do a course, right, to build entrepreneurial skills among people who are freedom-minded, so that we can ourselves break out more and more of this system, out of the cage, and develop. I mean, I'm telling you, going through this process of just starting to evolve into the mindset of being your own business person, your own boss, and exiting the system is part of this growth of understanding natural law in new ways and taking personal responsibility and facing your fears and doing your shadow work. And so he's doing this great program at a very affordable price. It's another way people could go in and try to do work that is doing the great work, but also helping to be a win-win, in an agora kind of way, in a new business sort of model. And so I'm going to be doing something. I'm a therapist, but I want to get totally out of insurance, and I want to be able to make a better living so that I can, do more of this work and go on to conferences and do different things. So I'm going to be creating a program geared towards women who have had relationship, dysfunctions in their life and are really, wanting a change. And I'm going to guide them through, learning about themselves and their relationships in such a way that I can weave in, natural law principles into their real life experiences in a way that maybe an average therapist doesn't do. But we who understand sort of how natural law operates in all our lives, I think through compassion and patience, and yes, meeting people, where they're at to some degree, can help move the dial, more so. So that's all I'll say.
Your lighting's awesome tonight, Leslie. You look like a beautiful angel.
So I have a question for everybody here. What is the biggest resistant response that you get from people when you approach individuals on natural law?
I think it's go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Leslie, please.
What I see is the belief that it can only be solved through existing government structures. Like, people just can't make that shift out of the belief that this is the way it's always been. This is the only way we can do the work.
I had someone tell me the other day, people are just animals, and this is a mother of three. It's crazy, but not in any kind of malicious way. But it's just like deep down, that is our innate metaphysical view, is just that people need to be told what to do. So a lot of people will hear me and they say, "Hey, I agree with everything you're saying," but then I see them not actually applying it. It's one thing to see something, hear it out. You see a movie, you can even be inspired by it. You can even, take an action based on it. But it still hasn't changed your habituated behavioral response that develop over the course of your life. And people still got that. So that's the number one resistance. It's really not that it's the resistance. It's the lack of resistance that they have to their behavioral patterns that they don't even know are acting against their interests. The people are not even acting in their self-interest, let alone in the interest of truth.
I would just go on, Brandon. Sorry.
Oh, not just real quick. To answer Brandon's question, is getting them to see things from a objective standpoint, and rather, from their subjective, perception, because they've been conditioned to just interpret things from just a subjective, form of belief, constantly. That getting them to see the bigger picture and the connectedness, like the harmoniousness that we all share, has been one of the biggest barriers, because the whole satanic mindset is fueling their ego, and they are just so connected to it that they don't want to let it go. So getting them to see things and from a bigger picture, a different perspective, has been one of the hardest things, as far as trying to spread this knowledge of natural law and objective morality. Sorry about that, Sarah.
No, I always like to hear what you have to say about stuff.
Derek, you're a warrior. I see you hanging in there.
My only answer that I could give to that, Brandon, would be it's a fear-based response. But I think that people see this from a lot of different angles, and my angles, because primarily what I see is like one-to-one person activity in the physical community with people. I mean, being online is a really great way to reach a lot of different people and allow them to take personal responsibility for the information and either take it in or not take it in. But one-on-one interaction can actually affect people in quite a different way, like just sitting there in like a circle and, you know, distracting them even with like some kind of minor activity, group activity, and doing this kind of work with them has so much power in it to really heal people. And so like I work with a lot of people. I end up, well, working around a lot of people where it's all a fear-based response. And whenever they hear information like this, it's not that they don't want to take it in or accept it as true. A lot of them, it's more about fear because they're afraid of what will happen to them and them being left behind. And that's a lot of the people I end up kind of working with and being in those circles, because most of you know my background is more in the medical circles, with, you know, chronic patients and stuff, and just dealing with those sorts of circles. But it really isn't that they don't want, like from my experience working with people like that, it's not that they don't want to know this information. They're afraid of what it means if they just accept it outright, because they're really just afraid of being left behind. And I get that a lot. And I've had people who will resist me. They're like, you're out of your freaking mind. And then like, you know, but something I said affected them. And 6 months later, they come back and they're like, and I think personally, I think that is like a really, really beautiful thing that happens with people, because it's very organic and they got to it almost on their own. And it just took one thing, you know, and a lot of the people that I know, they're not even online. They just don't go on the internet. So I really would encourage people to be out in their community as well, you know, as stifling as sometimes that might be, but it really is a beautiful process to see that in person. So that's how I would answer that. It's a fear-based response. And I feel like it's about feeling like being left behind because they're not where maybe some of the rest of us are. So that's how I hope that helps.
I think that's perfect what you're saying. The reason I get frustrated sometimes when people talk about the freedom movement, I don't really think we have a freedom movement yet. We're trying to get one started. But when you see a freedom movement happen, you're going to see problems being solved in the world. And that's when people are going to start realizing that the ship they're on is sinking and there's a better one, right? But that takes these levels of trust and communication that most people aren't ready to bridge that gap. It really does take communicating with someone to build trust, and it takes trusting someone to, you know, build communication. Both things are back and forth. It is relationships. It is building relationships with people, but we have to start with quality, on the same page with the same principles in mind. And if we don't, we're on shaky ground. It's all full of holes. We're walking across a bridge that has big giant holes in it. We're not agreeing on the path. We're walking in two different directions, you know? So how do we do that? It's not easy, you know, but one thing I really appreciate about this is hearing 9 brains work on it is a lot more powerful than just mine. And we do have 9 brains here, you know, or more out there. You know what I mean? And all we have to do is learn to communicate with them and build trust with them until we can get the truth out, you know? So, yeah, pass it on.
That's how they do it to us. You know, they got people, keep people in all aspects of life. So if you don't get the person interested in politics, they're going to get them in entertainment, they're going to get them here, or it's going to be somebody that affects you in relationships. So, you know, we got to do the stuff that's known to work, which is you got to have a lot of different voices involved. And it's the same thing in construction. You got all the subs in all their trades. All the trades got to come together and not everybody's. There's a point at which you reach kind of a ceiling, and then somebody just needs a different voice, and then that it's all about timing, right? So that'll be the person to get through to them. And this is why there is strength in numbers. It's not just the quantity that makes a difference. It's the range of qualities that are included in that.
Douglas Martin added in the chat about, a short way of describing the cause of the barriers to people understanding natural law, and that's mind control. And I think that's accurate. And so what we are all really required to do is understand the mind and do our own study of psychology, so that we can use that knowledge, as the dark occultists have done against us, but to understand psychology well enough to meet people where they are at psychologically, and use, motivational approaches to help guide them through love, compassion, and keeping ourselves aligned with truth and what's right, and not violating our own principles. I think that's really important. As frustrated as we get, or as determined as we get, we want to stay aligned with the principles and not coerce people or, cause harm to them in any way.
I wanted to add to the question from earlier. I think that the Socratic method is very good for people. I've got very good results when it comes to meeting people at their own consciousness level. Rather than telling them the answers, try to get them to, invoke the answer from within, so that they're critically thinking and they're trying to engage in the mental faculties that will strengthen their problem-solving methodologies. So we fall into this habit of telling people what we know, when in fact, if we can get them to feel as if they came up with the idea themselves, then they're more likely to be engaged in it, because of the emotional spectrums that come along with that. Because we feel like this energy that comes from within us when we discover something. It's this all moment from our child spirit, really, is what we're invoking. And I mean, I'm a new dad right now, so I see that in my newborn right now, where he has these all moments looking around at the world. And this is a very powerful aspect of the human consciousness and human experience. And this is what ancient totemic cultures and nature cults and societies would try to invoke in people, rather than just hammering it into them over and over and over. Some people need the hammer and some people don't. You just have to figure out and kind of surf the chaos when it comes to that. You have to gauge people's own capacity for the knowledge, and yes, meet them on their own level, and have a good vocabulary and vernacular, because not all the same, all the words that work for certain groups or a certain individual will work for everybody. So when I see people have an issue with the word anarchy, I use volunteerism, and then slowly Socratically move them over to the idea of anarchism, just by questions. And I think that's a very good methodology, one on one. And I like what Sarah had to say about watching the people, come back, because I've had a lot of one on one in my personal experience. And some of you guys know about my background. And it's really nice to see people come back to you and be like, wow, I get it. It took me a minute, but I finally realized. And you see this beautiful light blossom within them, and their whole consciousness, their aura, their energy just explodes. And that's really when it's resonating. Some people can learn the information and it just goes in one ear and out the other, and they can repeat it to you like a robot. They'll tell you, oh yeah, I understand this. They don't really understand it because it hasn't been integrated, as what Conrad was talking about. It hasn't been habitually put into their character, their virtues. It hasn't been programmed in the subconscious, is what it comes down to. So I think I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, another big thing is principles. The concept, talk about conceptual thinking, is a foreign one in today's world, of a principle being more powerful than a result. And sometimes we do things that we don't know if it's going to work out well for us, but we know that the end result matters more than the immediate pain or suffering, And so, for instance, as a parent, once you become a parent, you realize that at any moment you'd be willing to die for your child to live. And um, that is the aspect of what we're trying to do here. There is a certain aspect of sacrifice to it. You're not going to always see the result of doing what's right in your lifetime, and we can't get so stuck on that. And that's what I hear people doing. To answer your question, really, people are their mind is totally based on results and material results. If they can't see it in front of them, so how are you going to do that? That's the immediate question people say when you start talking about natural law. Well, how are you going to do that? And they start this thing up right away. Okay, if we took everybody and put them on an island and say, okay, we go with the island thing. All right. I mean, I can rock that. I'll get into the convo, but like, it's not really about how's it going to work out tomorrow or the next day. It's about, are you doing the right thing or not?
Chris, you invoking self-defense and protecting children just makes me I think I am terrified of death, but not the kind that they're gonna kill me when I stand up. It's the death every single time I knew to speak up and I didn't. Every single time I knew I was being a coward. This is the death that I fear, and I've trained myself to really hate that every time that I wasn't what I could be. And now it's just easy to do the right thing. At least when it comes to this, it's just gotten easy. And I know when the time comes, I'm going to be willing to do what other people are not willing to do, because the death that most people fear is really an illusion. The thing that we should fear, we actually all do it every day. So,
A million little deaths.
And I just wanted to add real quick, just to add to what everybody is saying. I think, especially when interacting and affecting other people with information like this, it might be good to consider, instead of using a scenario like, well, maybe what if a dragon situation, blah, 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 instead just be firm in how you're standing or how you're presenting yourself, to whether it's online or in person. Be firm about what you're putting forth and lead by example, because even if the people who you are trying to reach are not quite getting what you're saying right now, or maybe it takes them some time or whatever, they're going to learn faster by your own example of how you behave and present yourself and conduct yourself in the world. I find people learn a lot faster that way than if you just tell them. Some people can learn that way, but most of us cannot. We've got to see how it gets done. And then it's like, oh, okay. So like I call it the what if a dragon situation, because it's something, it's just like making up a situation that is not necessarily based in any kind of a fact. It's a fantasy that's, exaggerated to the very extent of the exaggeration, which is often not the case in real life. So I just wanted to add that to it, because thought maybe that might be something to consider.
Great points by everyone, and I agree with all of those. It's ultimately qualitative and quantitative, and that's on the individual, on the micro and the macro, right? It's like, why do we want more people talking about the cause? Well, the cause is the quality. You have to be right in your information. And we need numbers because we need the noise of truth, the solution, true freedom to be everywhere where the normies are. So it's undeniable. It's in their face. It's the same principle and tactics that the social engineers use with the mainstream media. Everywhere you turn, someone's talking about Trump or some fucking political bullshit or sports, right? It's everywhere. That same tactic of quantitative, meaning in numbers, it's everywhere. That's where we want the one great work to be. But again, that qualitative is in your message. You must be right in your dissertation and in the information that you're propagating. So it's, both of those factors to kind of drown out the noise of deception and lies.
Very well said. I wanted to add to Sarah's point. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world," and I think that's what she's really saying with that. We all have to invoke this into our own character and make sure to behave the way that we are talking. And it's hard for a lot of people. I see that daily with so many people who claim to be anarchists or claim to be voluntarists, but when it really comes down to it, they end up, violating these principles at some level. So you have to stay consistent with these things, and that is the best way people, especially young people, learn from us as the peers of this information.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to kind of talk about what Will was talking about is the voice of truth. And this is what Chris Nelson, talks about is the voice of truth right now is being drowned out with the voice of deception, the voice of, how distortion, the voice of the lies. And this is how we, fight this battle is by conscious creation. And the more of us who are involved in this conscious creation, then the stronger this voice of truth and morality, freedom and natural law is going to, be help we broadcast out for more individuals to learn and hear, the voice of truth. And that's all that we are trying to do is to spread this message and inspire more people to use their voice, because if we don't have more conscious creation, we are never really going to inspire the individual, because that's really who we are trying to inspire is the individual, because it is the individual who is still under, mind control. It's not so much trying to target, like the whole populace. We have to target the individual, because the individual is the one who has free will, who has the ability to discern, who has thought, who can think. So we have to inspire and try to target the individual and lead by example for them to create change within themselves. And how do we do that? With the voice of truth, with more and more conscious creation. We put the knowledge back out there in the form of rhetoric, in the form of right action, in the form of what we are doing now. And the more and more of us that are doing that, then the more and more that possibility of others to come across this knowledge. And that's why it's so important for us to create with the tools that we have now, because if we don't, this opportunity is not going to be here, for decades, hell upon decades. We have to take advantage of the tools that we have now and create and put the voice of truth out there, because the voice of lies is drowning out. It's a deluge of lies. We live in a sea, a universe of lies. So we need more and more people to actually get engaged and activated to help us spread this message of truth. So then, therefore, we need more conscious creation, because we are never ever going to inspire the individual without more voices speaking the truth out there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just mention, I think it was my third to last slide presentation I did. Most of my stuff was based on Mark Passio's work, but I amalgamate it and organize it in certain ways. So I have my infographic on care for truth. So, step 1, care for truth. Step 2, you got to seek truth. Step 3, then it comes to what several people have mentioned in the last few minutes, where you got to embrace and accept it. And then step 4, you got to embody and live it. And then finally, you share and speak and teach it. So if you're sharing and speaking and teaching it, but you're a hypocrite and you're not embodying and living it, then that's going to create that contrast. And so, like Brandon said, Brandon Martin, about the Gandhi quote of you got to live by example, and what Sarah was talking about. Well, if the people are going to see, like children learn from your behaviors, so you can tell them, do what I say, not what I do. Well, then you're a hypocrite. You're not living by example. You're not being a good example. So if you're trying to speak or teach or share information, but you're not in alignment with it yourself, well, then you're, I guess, putting the cart before the horse, because those are the steps. Is you got to care and seek, and then embrace it instead of rejecting it. So you accept it, and then you got to embody and live it in your life, and then you can talk about it. But if you're acting in contradiction to what you're you're expecting other people to do, well, then you're failing at your own message that you're trying to get other people to do because you're not even doing it yourself.
I just want to add that I think one of the challenges, as we're really all working towards embodiment of the principles, is that as you do that, you come face to face with the ways you're enslaved. And so you start to realize that to fully live in anarchy, there's a lot more to do than one person can do alone, right? And that we all face our different challenges and ways in how we are trying to successfully, say, detach from government systems or certain behavioral goals and things like that. So I think we want to head towards the embodiment as much as possible, but also with compassion and understanding and patience, and being, I think, for us, pretty honest about the struggles and the ways that we sometimes, we are imperfect beings, but that doesn't mean we can't be teaching, should never get out here and do the work. But I think if we can be honest about the challenges of being an enslaved species and help support people, because then people will relate to us, I think, more, honestly, than if we somehow act like we have it all together. And I have to go.
All right. Well, it's time for an old man story anyway. We're almost done. But you guys remember years ago, I used to do this thing called Teams Ropes challenge courses. And we would lead groups in like these team exercises to get people to work together. And we had one game we used to play, you guys probably played it as kids, called the Blob, where you just get everybody out in the field, one person's it. And if they tag another person, they both got to connect arms. And then pretty soon, the more people you tag, you got this big giant blob of people running around, and it's like blob thinking. The other term is collectivism. And I just see this, it's so deep in all people's minds. Yeah, I had to keep fighting it myself. People always want to think about it in terms of, how do we get all these people to do something? It's like, no, you can't think about it that way. That's collectivist thinking. That is the way they've tricked us into thinking that you can do things that way by controlling masses of people and, getting a bunch of people to do something all at once. It's like, nope, I love what you guys brought it back to the individual, because that is ultimately, it is an individual choice. And, we could try our might and people have to care at some point. And that's why, we're inspiring care to action. But I'm going to start talking a little bit about tomorrow. Did anyone not finish their thought before we kind of close up that chat? Thanks so much, everybody in the chat. Great questions and great conversation there. I'm looking around and everybody's faces look pretty satisfied. So let's just chat a little bit about tomorrow. I'm really excited. Tomorrow we got Jackie Krasna. We're going to hear some music from the Funky Fathers, some more Diesel Automatic. We're going to hear from Joe Murray, a song from Joe Murray. And we're going to hear Jake Jackson, Jim Adams on permaculture, the missing ethic of permaculture. Leslie Powers, her presentation on the power of music, bridging matter and spirit. We're going to hear a song by Melissa Mari, in memory of Melissa, who recently passed, friend of a lot of people in this community. Nate Cap, Mental Power, and Will Keller is going to close out the day with Symbiosis, the Rhythm of Life. And we're going to hear some music from Joe Raffiti. So there's a lot going on tomorrow. It's going to be a little bit of a longer day, so everybody get some good sleep and come back with your mind sharp. And I'm looking forward to seeing everyone back tomorrow for more freedom under natural law.
Hey, Chris, real quick. Also tomorrow, we're going to premiere a new video related to Mark Passio's upcoming event in November. So everyone tune in tomorrow. It's going to be it's a really cool little treat.
For day two. Etienne is going to join us live from Mexico if all goes smoothly. That's the plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Howard Lickman, Etienne de la Beauté. So look forward to that. So yeah, big day tomorrow. So I'm gonna start go get something to eat and start getting prepped for tomorrow's plan. So thanks.
Will and Chris, real quick, any idea when the presentations will be uploaded? Because I would love to get all this on a 24/7 live stream, but once it gets uploaded.
It usually takes us pretty quick. I mean, I would say 1 to 2 days to get everything uploaded. So, yeah, I mean, we start uploading them right away.
Sweet.
Yep.
All right. Appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Oh, and I didn't get to thank Jim Adams isn't here with us today. He'll be around tomorrow. He put a lot of work in to help us out on the website, and he actually spent a bunch of his own money. Somebody in the chat was talking about marketing. He was doing paid ads, trying to bring people in just with his own money. He's no rich man. He cleans pools and drives Uber Eats. So thanks so much to Jim for all the hard work. And he's a father of 2 as well. So a lot of these people doing this work don't have a lot of free time, and they do it anyway. So it's just a force of will. So thanks, wonderful presenters and roundtable people and our folks in the chat, and much love. We'll see you tomorrow. Evil is the destruction of freedom. All right. I'm going to try to bring in some music, but having a little trouble finding it.
All right, and see you tomorrow, guys. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me.
There it is.
If you are intelligent, then you know that freedom is inherent, cause it's evident. It doesn't come from government, it don't come from the president, it comes from the creator of all universal elements. Some people say it's God-given, others say it's heaven-sent. No matter what you call it, natural law sets the precedent. Subjective morality's a fallacy. There's laws that we cannot see, like gravity, that people accept happily, but tragically they believe that freedom has to be granted to them magically by royalty or majesty. It's sad to see people willingly give up their liberty, cause they don't really see the enemy that's on a killing spree. The state, it hates sovereign individuals, cause those who follow natural law and abide by all its principles are mentally invincible, immune to the brainwash. We liberate ourselves and then help others break the chains off. We ain't soft, we go hard, like when the thunder hits. Guns and clips, ready in self-defense from the government and the elitists running it. Blast them all, claim our freedom standing under it. Natural law, the elitists running it. Blast them all, claim our freedom standing under it. Natural law, freedom under natural law. For us all, yeah, freedom under natural law. For us all, yeah, freedom under natural law. For us all, what? For us all, what? Freedom for us all, what? You know what we do. Get big on FUNL.